Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. It's time to refresh our recommendations for the best 1080p gaming monitors on the market today. Something we like to do every so often, given it's a great opportunity to use the wealth of testing data we've accumulated over the last few years. 1080p still remains a super popular resolution for budget monitor buyers, and at the higher end, 1080p also offers a great experience for competitive gamers thanks to the high refresh rates that are possible. I do see quite a few comments saying that 1080p is a dead resolution, but that's absolutely not true based on what we are seeing at retail, with 1080p high refresh being the second most popular category for buyers in 2020 after 1440p. In today's video, we'll be looking at 144Hz, 240Hz and 360Hz options for today's gamers. I haven't tested a ton of lower refresh rate 1080p options, so we're not going to be talking about what is basically the lowest end segment in the market today. Our recommendations are heavily influenced by the monitors we've actually tested and know to be good, so it wouldn't make much sense to talk about a category that we don't really test. Anyway, let's get into talking about the 144Hz class. We'll kick this one off with a look at 1080p high refresh monitors, although I guess these days monitors that top out at 144 to 165Hz are more medium refresh rate given the prevalence of 240Hz and above, especially at 1080p. This is by far the most popular category for 1080p buyers, and there is a serious wealth of options to choose from, which makes picking one out quite tricky. I'm going to split this category up into two different brackets depending on your budget. The best quality IPS offerings of today and more budget oriented models for those looking to save money. There may only be a $40 to $60 difference between these brackets, but when we're largely talking about $200-ish monitors, that could be a significant amount of cash. Those after a higher quality 1080p 144Hz monitor are in a bit of a tricky situation, as the best option varies heavily depending on your region and the pricing that various companies are using there. The monitor that I'd recommend for buyers here in Australia is actually different to buyers in the US thanks to this and a bit of volatility in the monitor market right now. Supply issues are affecting displays, just not to the same extent as other PC components. For most people, my current recommendation for 1080p 144Hz buyers is the AOC 24G2. There was a period of several months where I hesitated to recommend the 24G2, given that AOC changed the panel quietly at some point last year without changing the name or informing customers. However, I bought the new variant and found that while it doesn't perform the same as the older variant, in some ways it's actually superior, especially for response times. The 24G2 and its larger 27-inch brother, the 27G2, include an IPS panel, adaptive sync, and a refresh rate that tops out at 144Hz. I was impressed with the build quality that includes features like a height adjustable stand, not often found on more budget-oriented displays. But one of the key features, especially of the newer 2020 variant, is response time performance, which is very strong and in some ways as good as higher end 1440p monitors. The 24G2 is among the best 1080p IPS monitors I've tested for motion clarity, which makes it a great choice for gaming. Other aspects are solid as well, including its wide gamut support and contrast ratio. However, the older 2019 variant is superior for contrast ratio and factory calibration, so it may be worth hunting the older model if you need those features. But in general, this is a versatile monitor with a nice set of features and great performance at the price. However, the price does fluctuate a lot depending on your region. Currently in Australia, the 24G2 is one of the cheapest 1080p 144Hz monitors on the market, so recommending it is a no-brainer. It's excellent value. However, in the United States, the price fluctuates anywhere from $190 to $260. At $190, it's an outstanding buy, but it's not as competitive at $260. At that price, there are several other options I'd consider. One is the BenQ EX2510. While usually more expensive than the 24G2 for a similar level of performance, if pricing is similar to the 24G2 in your region, then it's also a good choice. Hopefully pricing drops on this product a little bit from here, given I do think it's pretty good. It's just its $250 MSRP that's holding it back. Another option that's worth considering is the MSI G242. It's not a monitor that I've tested, but it uses the same panel as the AOC 24G2 new version. This suggests that performance should be pretty similar to what I've shown in my 24G2 review in terms of response times and color performance, although MSI will use different overdrive settings. Based on previous MSI monitors that I've reviewed, they are competent at getting decent results from a given panel. The reason I'm suggesting the G242 is its price tag, which is often around the $190 mark, the same as the lower price for the AOC 24G2. So if you are in a region like the US where the 24G2 is often selling at a high price, it is one to consider, although ultimately its lack of height adjustability doesn't make it as strong of an offering as the AOC model. If you want something larger in the 27-inch range, in addition to the AOC 27G2, I'd also consider Gigabyte's G27F and M27F, which offer a classic 1080p 144Hz IPS experience, which I expect would be similar to the models we've just been talking about. Gigabyte are mostly focusing on 27-inch 1080p monitors in their 1080p lineup, and these two options often have very competitive pricing in the $220 range. While products like the 24G2 and MSI G242 can be quite affordable, there are cheaper options also worth considering. Both the Pixio PX248 Prime and the Asus VP249 QGR are worth considering here, and both appear to use similar panels. I've tested both the PX248 Prime and the Prime S version, and honestly I would save the money to get the slightly cheaper non-S model, which retails for just $170, a great price. Response times are similar to the older version of the 24G2, and while factory calibration could use some work, it's an acceptable panel overall. There are plenty of other similar 1080p 144Hz IPS monitors to choose from as well around this mark, so it's worth doing some research as to what is available in your region and at what price. The good thing is that most of these options use one of just a handful of panels, and from what I've tested, I'd say the performance you're getting is decent considering the price. What I would steer clear from at the moment are 1080p VA monitors. The value proposition simply isn't there compared to IPS, especially as most of these VAs use fairly mediocre panels with issues like dark level smearing and slow response times. The Asus VG24VQ, for example, is a particularly popular option, but it costs $180, only $10 less than a decent IPS like the MSI 24G2, and $10 more than cheaper options like Asus's own VP249 QGR. I don't think it's worth saving $10 for the trade-offs a VA would introduce. I wouldn't want to spend more than $150 on this sort of display in the market conditions that we have right now. As for 1080p 144Hz TN panels, again the value proposition isn't great. You can find some monitors with these specs below $150 like the Acer KG241QP, but many options I feel are overpriced. The LG 24GL600F, for example, was a great budget option on release, but the price squeeze on IPS places it around the same mark as a budget IPS alternative. You may want to consider one for backlight strobing technology, although finding a panel that does this well at 144Hz at an acceptable price is quite difficult. When buying a 240Hz monitor, there are two clear paths you can take. Either you can go down the full esports competitive gaming route and buy a high quality TN monitor with excellent backlight strobing, or you can grab something more balanced, and that's where today's 1080p 240Hz IPS monitors come into play. So far, I've reviewed a handful of 1080p 240Hz IPS offerings, and my pick of the bunch is the MSI Optics MAG251RX, which offers an excellent balance of fast response times and image quality. One of this monitor's strengths is offering TN-like speed at 240Hz, giving you the true benefit of that refresh rate along with low input lag. MSI backed this up with great performance across the refresh range, better than Asus's tough gaming competitors, which unfortunately deliver varying performance within gaming with adaptive sync enabled. The MAG251RX is also surprisingly competent at backlight strobing, although not as good as today's best TN monitors that we'll talk about soon. However, this does keep the MSI model around the mark for gamers that like a mixture of gaming, both esports and AAA single player. When combined with its strong contrast ratio for an IPS panel, excellent viewing angles and great factory calibration, MSI are delivering a very well balanced experience. Unfortunately, the MAG251RX is difficult to find in some regions. Here in Australia, it's currently available at actually a really great and competitive price point, but in other regions like the USA, it can go months without being in stock at all. If you are fortunate enough to land one, generally speaking, it's not only the best performing 1080p 240Hz IPS I've tested, but also the best value, so that may explain its stock issues. However, there is a backup option, and it's here that I'd go for either the LG 27GN750 at a 27-inch size or the Asus VG259QM at a 24-inch size. My preference here is the LG monitor as it delivers superior response time performance, however it won't be a great option for those that want backlight strobing, as it doesn't support it. Other areas are generally equal and both deliver a great colour experience. However, those after strobing should consider Asus's tough VGQM monitors instead, but they do tend to be somewhat more expensive, which reduces the value proposition on offer. One thing I should mention though is that 1080p 240Hz monitors are generally quite a lot more expensive than 144Hz options. So the question here is often, is it actually worth spending double the price, if not more, to nab something 240Hz? And to me, that depends a lot on your upgrade plans and the games you play. A 1080p 144Hz display is more of an entry-level product, and I'd imagine many buyers would be looking to upgrade sooner to something like a 1440p display. In contrast, a 1080p 240Hz panel will last you longer, especially if high refresh rate gaming is your thing, because there's a lot more headroom on offer here. So one angle is that while 240Hz is more expensive, it's also more future-proof. With that said, generally these high refresh rate displays at this resolution are more suited to competitive gamers, so if you only play these sorts of titles occasionally, then it may not be worth the cost increase. 240Hz does offer a lot to gamers that play Fortnite, Overwatch, Valorant, Apex Legends and similar titles, and it should last those gamers a fair while. I'd prefer a 1080p 240Hz display over a 1440p 144Hz monitor in those situations, which are often a similar price. The ultimate monitor for esports gaming at the moment appears to be the BenQ Zowie XL2546K. It's a 1080p 240Hz TN monitor whose main selling point is BenQ's Diac Plus backlight strobing technology. While I haven't tested this monitor yet myself, various other outlets and users have consistently shown outstanding backlight strobing results, leading to a super clear image that benefits esports gamers. Combined with a high refresh rate and the input latency benefits that brings, the XL2546K is the go-to choice for high-end competitive gaming in a lot of circles. However, the XL2546K won't be for everyone, certainly not those after a balanced experience, as like with many TNs, this display sacrifices a lot from color performance to achieve blazing fast response times. Expect poor viewing angles and a mediocre contrast ratio. It's also listed with a $500 US price tag, which is at least $100 more than the IPS options we were just talking about, so you have to be really set on using Diac to get the most out of what is otherwise a pricey option. But if you want the best, then as usual, that comes with a price. Before closing this video out, I'll touch on the cream of the crop 1080p monitors available right now, those in the 360Hz segment. There are only a couple out on the market right now, and all of them use the same AU Optronics panel. But when I tested the Asus PG259QN last year, I was extremely impressed with what it offered. Not only does the PG259QN deliver blazing fast response times, but thanks to its use of IPS technology, it also delivers great colors. Asus factory calibrates this display to an outstanding level, leading to some of the best accuracy results I've ever measured, to go along with great viewing angles. The real star of the show here though is the 360Hz refresh rate. Motion clarity without using backlight strobing was marginally higher than a 240Hz. However, the real reason to buy this display is the latency benefits. Using 360Hz is so ridiculously fast that it makes 144Hz feel sluggish, almost like the difference between 144 and 60Hz. This has serious benefits while gaming, and those after the absolute lowest latency should be very interested in something 360Hz. However, there are some drawbacks here. The backlight strobing mode is only okay, and those after the clearest image through strobing should instead look at the BenQ XL2546K we talked about in the 240Hz section. The PG259QN is a more balanced option, but its lack of strobing at 360Hz is a disappointment. It's also extremely expensive, with the current retail price of something like $900 US, which is ludicrous in comparison to 240Hz monitors. There is no doubting the quality on offer here, it's just that you are paying a hefty sum for it, so it's not exactly a bang for buck option. Alienware also makes a 360Hz monitor with similar specifications, although we haven't tested it. You can often find it on sale for below the price of the PG259QN, although for around $700 it's still a quite expensive monitor. Anyway, that's it for our look at the best 1080p gaming monitors on the market right now. Hopefully you've got all the information you need to buy the exact 1080p monitor that you want, and hopefully you've also found this range of information pretty useful. I did want to also cover things like esports gamers and more balanced gamers, because I know the requirements between those two buyers is quite different. You know, esports gamers may prefer TN monitors, more balanced gamers may want to go with something IPS, and I think both of those options on the market right now in the 1080p class are definitely worth considering. If you want to support our monitor testing and everything that we do on the channel here at Hardware Unboxed, you can do so via our Patreon and Floatplane accounts. Links are in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.